Very warm welcome viewers. You are watching the program Diplomatic Enclave from Channel 5 and I am your host Malik Manzur. Today it's a great privilege for me that I am joined by the Excellency Country Head Asian Development Bank for Pakistan, Dr. Werner Liepach. Very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
To the show. And after a long time we able to get your precious moment for this program.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be.
And sir, tell me that you have been here as ADB's country head, country director in Pakistan since 7 years. So what is your impression about Pakistan, and your interaction is much more with the Pakistani authorities. Yeah. So what are your actually feelings and impression about Pakistan being here?
Yeah. It's actually not 7 years, it's actually 5.5 years, coming to 6 years. But I came the first time to Pakistan nearly 20 years ago, in 1995, 1996. So I have a long association with Pakistan and many friends here. I enjoy being here. I enjoy working with the government. We enjoy excellent relations, and I think also very productive relations. So at that level, very happy to be here.
And sir, as we know that Asian Development Bank established its office 27 years back in Pakistan. So Pakistan is one of the founding members of the Asian Development Bank. And let me share with my viewers that Asian Development Bank is a very important development partner with Pakistan, and many projects are going on with Pakistan. But first of all, my question is that tell us about the 50th anniversary of your Asian Development Bank and regarding the celebration about it.
Yes. No, as you pointed out, the bank was established 50 years ago, and Pakistan was one of the founding members. Since then, we have grown a lot. We have now 67 member countries. Our shareholders are all countries, so we have private owners, but it's the countries of the region, and we are represented in all countries of Asia. The relationship with Pakistan has grown over the time. We established our office here in 1989, and since then we have now, Pakistan has become one of our largest clients, largest borrowers. Last year we provided nearly $2 billion in assistance, both from public sector and private sector, and a similar amount these days. And we consider Pakistan as one of our most trusted and reliable development partners, and I think that we have a big office here. We are expanding, we are recruiting more people. It's testimony that we think that the relationship is very good and very strong. We also had a little celebration just last month. We had an exhibit down in the Serena Hotel, where we had a photo exhibit to show the milestones that we have achieved. And as you can see also here, we are having a few glimpses of the projects that we are doing. It's a wind farm, it's industrial projects, but we're also dealing with the people. So that shows people a little bit the whole scale of operations that we're doing, which is actually quite a lot.
And sir, how do you look at the Pakistan's effort to escalate economic growth? And do you think that for economic development, the government of Pakistan introduced many economic reforms, but do you satisfy with these reforms, and do you see the economic stability in Pakistan?
If you look at the figures, I think it's pretty obvious that just look at 3 years ago where the economy was then. We had very low reserves. We had an IMF program. And not only did we have an IMF program, we actually completed the IMF program, and that was the first time in the history that a longer-term program with the IMF was completed. And Pakistan comes out of this program in a more strengthened position. Now, growth is around 5% right now. Could it be more? Some countries in the region are growing at a higher rate. Philippines, I just read now, is achieving 7%. China has more than 7%. And I do think that Pakistan definitely has the potential to grow at 7%. There is no doubt about it. But 5% is also better than many other countries in the region. If you compare that to Europe nowadays, they would be more than happy if they had 5%. Even in Central Asia, this is a region that has been growing very fast over the last decade. Of course, now with the slump in commodity prices, many countries in Central Asia are having much lower growth than Pakistan. So overall, while there is still scope to improve, I do think also one should give credit to what has been achieved. And as I said, the economy now is stable, and we also have a steady growth path. I do think that's already a very encouraging sign.
As your initial remarks, you mentioned that Pakistan is the most very trusted partner and members. So you are working here as a country head since 7 years. So what is your experience actually to interact with the Pakistani authorities regarding many projects when you meet? So how do you think?
Look, we operate in all the provinces, not just at the federal level. So of course I have contacts both in Islamabad, but I also go regularly to the provinces. And I met the chief ministers of all the provinces as well as the senior politicians. I have to say that I'm quite impressed actually with the government, that whenever we have an issue and we would like to approach the government, and I can pick up the phone and ask to see the minister, and they always make themselves available. And I think this shows maybe also the respect they give to the ADB. Exactly. But it also makes our life very easy, because if there are certain...
there is no communication gap.
There's no communication gap whatsoever, and I think this makes the relationship very special, because I know that Pakistan is a big country. Yes. And people are very busy, and I not try to take too much time, but sometimes you need to go straight to the top, and we have very good communication. That I have to say at all levels. So that makes my job actually both relatively easy and also quite enjoyable, because we do have a direct access, and I think this is something quite special that we enjoy here, and I'm very grateful for that.
And sir, one of the key challenges that we are facing actually, it's energy shortage, you know, and it's the main obstacle in the way of the economic growth. So Asian Development Bank is cooperating with Pakistan in energy sector. So what are the projects that are going on with Pakistan with your collaboration?
Yeah, in the energy sector, this is also not just the country's top priority, it's also ADB's top priority in the country, and right now we have more than $2.7 billion of energy projects. Now, what are the areas? I think we cover everything from the generation to the transmission to the distribution and the policy reform agenda. So on the policy side, we're trying to improve the regulatory framework. We are trying to looking at the financial sustainability. You know that there currently still is an issue of what they call a circular debt, which basically means arrears of in the power sector, which happens that the revenues do not cover the cost of production because we are relatively inefficient. So we're looking at the policy reforms to address this. We are investing into generation, and in particular now we're looking at clean energy. We are investing.
Clean energy means this environmentally
clean energy. So we're looking, for instance, ADB just approved an investment into the wind farm projects in Sindh. You know, there is the wind farm corridor. We just approved a project with 150 megawatt for which we contributed. We had done previous investment in the wind sector. We also have done a lot of investment in the hydropower sector, because the country has tremendous potential for hydro energy. There is about 60,000 megawatt potential, and so far only 7,000 have been realized. So we are investing into hydropower, so we are investing into energy. Then we also improve the transmission system, because it's not enough just to add the capacity. If you have more capacity but you cannot evacuate it, then it doesn't do it. So we're investing in transmission and then in distribution, because that is another problem area. There's a lot of losses at the distribution company. So we're looking at upgrading the grids. We're also trying to introduce new technology. There is something called smart metering that would allow actually a direct monitoring of the consumption. So you don't need the meter readers anymore. It will be all automatically digital. But it also would allow to regulate the amount of power that comes to a household. So what is happening right now, you have load shedding. And you have 3 hours of energy, electricity, and then 1 hour it is cut off. So with the smart metering, what they can do is they can give you maybe 3 or 2 hours energy, not unlimited energy, but you always have energy. And then for 1 hour, they lower the capacity. So maybe you cannot run your air cons and everything for 3 hours, but you would have for the full 3 hours, you can at least run your lights and
you can,
so this kind of technology allows a more...
It's a great facility, you know.
Yeah. So these things we hope to introduce on a pilot basis now in Islamabad and Lahore. And we're very enthusiastic about these technological changes. So this is where you can bring, this is why we call it smart grid. You can bring a technological solution that can directly benefit the people.
Exactly. And sir, how do you see the potential in Pakistan in power sector? That this country is full of natural resources, as you know, and our Prime Minister Mian Nawaz Sharif stated many times that Pakistan will come over this power shortage nearly in 1 or 2 years, I mean in 2018. So you are satisfied with the measures taken by the government to overcome this power shortage?
I think all the steps are going in the right direction. As I've said, it's not just that we add on more generation. This is too simple to think that because we have a shortage, we need just to add on more generation. You need to also look at efficiency measures. Right now, for instance, if you had energy savings, a lot of power could actually be saved, and if you save energy, it's actually much faster and cheaper than building a new power plant. There's a lot of losses that are being reduced, that need to be reduced, the technical losses as well as non-technical losses, basically meaning people not paying the bill, are still very high in Pakistan compared to the region. So there is a tremendous potential to actually improve the efficiency. In the sector. Right now the steps are going in the right direction, and I do think that it's a multi-year program. It cannot be resolved within a single year. The government now tries to do that by 2018, and I do think that is possible.
It is possible.
It is possible. Whether it will happen or not, we have to see, but it's definitely possible. But I don't think that one then can sit back and say, okay, we have resolved the crisis, because you need to keep in mind two things. Number one is, yes, if you define energy crisis as hours of load shedding, that's simple. But keep in mind that in Pakistan, less than 70% actually have access to energy. There's 30% of the population that don't have any electricity at all. So they get 24 hours load shedding, so to speak.
Yes.
And even if you reduce the load shedding to those people who have access, they still have 24 hours. So the challenge really is to add these people to the grid and to give them energy. And so that is a big challenge. And then, of course, also, you know, Pakistan has a vision 2025, yes, which they had approved. And they had a very ambitious agenda for 2025, not just for 2018. 2018 is the election horizon for the government, yes, and we need to add, and they said we need to add 5,000 megawatt by 2018. But if you want to go to 2025, there is 25,000 megawatt to add. And keep that in perspective to how much is currently installed. Currently installed capacity is 24,000 capacity. So which means from 2018 to 2025, you need to add as much capacity as the current installed capacity is to actually generate the power that the country needs. And that's not just to fill the load shedding, that's also giving power, energy, access
and affordable
to people,
energy, you know.
affordable energy to people who currently have no energy at all. So if you ask me 2018 the crisis is solved, no, it's not solved, because there's a lot of people who don't have energy.
Which already are deprived from this facility.
Yeah, you can stop the load shedding by 2018. But if you stop the load shedding, you haven't resolved the energy crisis.
Because you have to bring those people in.
Exactly, you know. Exactly. And for me, this is actually just as important as reducing the load shedding.
And sir, renewable energy sector is also very having a very good potential in Pakistan. Alternative energy and renewable energy sector. And many countries also shown their interest to invest in Pakistan in this sector. Yeah. So do you think that we can explore this sector as well to overcome this crisis?
I think there's huge potential for this sector. I mean, what we see is two things. One is you're looking at wind, yes, already very active. There is a big capacity in particularly near Karachi, in Tata, in the wind corridor. And there is a lot of foreign investment coming in. ADB also invested in our private sector operations in this. And we did this with international companies. We had co-financing with some Turkish companies here. So Turkish companies, we just had the president here. They have been very active, and they also have been very active in the energy sector.
Yes, they mentioned actually in the...
And ADB has been a co-investor with the Turkish investors in this one. But also this is very interesting for international manufacturers of turbines. We got turbines coming in from General Electric, or we got turbines coming in from Denmark. Vestas is a world leader. So you see world-class products actually being applied in Pakistan in the renewable energy sector. We're also looking at the solar sector. The huge potential for solar, particularly in Pakistan. Of course, you can go into Balochistan. There's a lot of sun there.
And sir, I also belong to a village. I have seen, I have witnessed that this solar is popularly using by the people who live in village.
Yeah. I mean, of course, with solar, it's not that easy. There are two things that have to be addressed. Number one, it used to be still a little bit more expensive than the other forms of energy, but the prices have come down now. And the other thing with solar is that, of course, the energy is available when the sun shines. Yes. And you can have storage facilities, so with batteries, but that makes it a bit more expensive. Now, there's big advancement also with the battery storage facility technology, and that, of course, will help also with the solar energy. But there's a potential there. And then, I mean, even for small hydroelectric, like there's a lot of water, and it's not just the big dams, it's actually also small facilities. We are just about to approve a project for access to clean energy, where we will support the installation of small micro-hydro stations in Chitral and KP. And this is a very remote area, so these people don't need to be connected to the grid. You can actually have in a remote village, but you have a water stream there, you put on a very small hydel things. These things can be done at very low cost, and it can supply the whole community with water. And I think these are type of initiatives that are now being done, and I do think this is very important to also solve the energy crisis.
Sir, just you mentioned that Turkish companies, you are also cooperating in that energy sector. So how do you see, as because you are a very prominent economist, how do you see the investment climate in Pakistan as a country director of Asian Development Bank here in Pakistan?
This is one area where I think one can still improve a lot. Just recently the World Bank released a report called the Pakistan Competitiveness or World Competitiveness Report. And it showed Pakistan is towards the lower part of the table. It has improved a little bit. It went up a few notches, but in the global context, Pakistan is still perceived as being a little bit difficult for investors. There's a lot of red tape, and I myself, I meet a lot of businessmen. They say there are many challenges. Even getting access to power is a problem. Sometimes even you're not yet connected and you need to have access to energy grid is an issue. People complained about very cumbersome and lengthy procedures for getting tax refunds. Then you need certain licenses in different areas of the business. So generally, this is an area where Pakistan can improve a lot, and I think this is also a great opportunity, because if you were to ease the business environment, I think this is where you could actually potentially reap the greatest benefit for further increasing your growth.
Exactly. And can you mention, sir, that in education or health or some other projects ADB is investing or cooperating with Pakistan? Can you explain it in detail?
Yeah. Look, of course, that is another big area where many of bilateral partners are active. Everybody looks at what are the challenges for Pakistan, and you look at the social sector indicators, and again, by international standards, they're very low. It is also clear that in the long term, the economy can only survive or be sustained if you do have the skilled people there. And you need to make sure also that the health services are being provided properly. Now, as I said, there are many bilateral donors that are working in this area. So DFID, and they have grant money. So government, of course, ADB is mostly providing loans. So the government has asked us to finance productive investments in infrastructure. So infrastructure investment is our top priority. It doesn't mean that we don't do things in health. So we have started also a private sector initiative, which is very innovative, where we provide funding for long-distance education through Wi-Fi. So you see, one of the big issues is the quality of teaching in the schools. Yes. And you don't have enough teachers, or if you have teachers, they don't work
they're
properly.
Not trained in so
they're
much.
Not trained. So now what you can do, and this is an initiative, that you have a little van, and it's like a mobile school. The van has is fully equipped with energy power, and it has a WiMAX connection. And then they have like 20 or 30 laptops, and then they go to the village, and then you can get the kids together, and then you can have the training provided through the internet. The teacher can be in Karachi or Lahore, and the students are in the field, and you just have a facilitator, and you can monitor the quality of the teaching.
Yes.
So again, this is a very innovative initiative, and I mentioned this just to illustrate that we need to think out of the box, how we can provide services. And I do think also technology has a lot of potential. Also health, for instance. Nowadays, one of the issues is, for instance, in maternal health. And a lot of women also, they don't like to go to the hospital, or they be asked to pay. So now you could have, for instance, scanners that could check whether the baby is okay, and the data can be automatically transmitted electronically to some center in Karachi or Lahore, and then the analysis can be done effectively. And so there's a lot of technology, and we are really interested to see how can we use the technology in the improvement of the social services, and that also means you have to involve the private sector. Beyond this, we are also working with the Benazir Income Support Program.
Okay.
So that is something we think is incredibly important, because there are still a lot of people that are excluded from the main opportunities. So of course we think this is very good, and it's doing a lot of good to the poorest of the poor. But we are also trying to develop, not just to give them money, but also maybe develop skills for them to get a job. And we are working with the BISP as well as with the provincial authorities to develop what we call graduation programs. So you can graduate out of poverty, and that is giving them opportunities and particular skills.
Okay. Here we take short commercial break, and then we will resume our conversation. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers. Dr. Werner, as you mentioned that Pakistan is a very founding member of Asian Development Bank, and we have a very cordial coordination, cooperation in many fields. Yeah. So in the past we witnessed that ADB assisted Pakistan to rehabilitate the infrastructure damaged by natural disaster. My question is that is Asian Development Bank is funding to protect the communities regarding reoccurring this natural disaster again?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, and I'm glad you asked this, because I think this is one of the most important areas, and ADB is making a big contribution. Pakistan is recognized as one of the most exposed countries to natural disasters and also to climate change. Floods will come. Floods have happened in the past, and floods will happen in the future. Yes. Likewise, there are earthquakes, there are droughts. These things, they happen all the time. And what has historically happened is that every time a disaster happens, then we trying to find the money to rebuild. And obviously, this is not a sustainable way. So after there was the last disaster, a big flood in 2014, again, Finance Ministry asked the donors, can you contribute to this? We said, okay, we'll do this, but we really need to go beyond it, and we need to strengthen the resilience. So we have started an initiative that we have developed for the last 2 years to actually prepare the country for future disasters. And next week, ADB will bring to the board an initiative for $200 million to actually do exactly this.
Okay.
To help the preparedness of natural disaster. This is just the first phase. We actually committed to provide up to $1 billion for doing this, because the investments that are needed are quite big. What are these investments? For instance, you're looking at schools. Schools, sometimes the buildings are such, when the earthquake happens, a lot of kids actually, when they happen to be in the school, so we need to strengthen these public sector buildings, public structures. Then look at the flooding. When the last flood was there in
2010 and 11, I think.
2010 and 11 was tremendous floods in Sindh, in northern areas. Things got washed away. And what one needs to do is to actually build the embankments. One needs to strengthen the embankments. One needs to look actually also, where do people live? And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The government has developed a few plans. There is something called the National Disaster Risk Management Plan. Then there's a Federal Flood Protection Plan that says you need to invest about $3 billion to actually make the country more resilient. But I do think this will help a lot in protecting future investments. I don't have the exact figures for Pakistan, but we estimate that the cost of the last flood was between $10 to $15 billion of damages. Now, you know, there was a few years back in the US, was this Hurricane Katrina, and they estimated the damage there to be more than $100 billion. And interestingly, before that event happened, somebody made a study and said, look, this could happen. And if this could happen, and if that happened, there would be a damage of $100 billion. And you could prevent it by investing about 10 or $20 billion. But people were complacent, and they have not invested.
And when they suffered, they think about that.
And then later on, they said, well, if we had invested $20 billion, we could have saved $100 billion. So it shows you that it is so much more efficient to actually invest in the prevention. And we think if the last time we had $10 billion of damage, and we invest $1 billion to prevent this, this will be a very good investment. And it's not just about investing into the infrastructure and protecting the infrastructure. Even more important is that we can save lives with this, because people died in those earthquakes because the building infrastructure, the buildings were not built with the proper standards, or people were living in areas where they should not be living. And if we have a proper preventive plan and measures, it will actually save lots of lives.
Then damage can be less, you know.
Damage can be less, also human damage. So this is, for me, is one of the most important things. And as I said, we are now just about to launch this new initiative. It's called the Pakistan National Disaster Risk Management Fund. It's going to be established before the end of the year under the leadership of the Ministry of Finance, and I think they have shown a tremendous support in doing this. We worked very closely also with the EAD on this one, and we think this will be a flagship. It will be something which is not just good for Pakistan, but for the region. It's a model. We really tried to do it as a best practice model, and I think it's something which we feel other countries can benefit as well. So that's something we think is something we are very proud of.
Sir, according to expert on environment, Pakistan is one of the most affected country by climate change.
Yes.
So in this regard, do you think that government of Pakistan is making the projects And we have seen that Prime Minister attended in Paris International Climate Conference, and its goals and the target have been fixed. So how do you see that Pakistan will be able actually to overcome this coming crisis?
Yeah. Look, I mean, climate change is something, again, which is there. The problem is that Pakistan is also most affected by the consequences. Now, there are two things. On the prevention side, of course, Pakistan should do its share. And I mean, one of the key things and key drivers on climate change is, of course, pollution, coal, greenhouse emissions.
A separate ministry, you know, has established.
Coordinating this. Of course, one also has to be mindful that many of the implementation measures are to be done by the provinces. And often funding is an issue there, but I do think that the awareness in Pakistan is already there.
And Excellency, we see in Pakistan that Pak-China Economic Corridor project is considered to be a game changer in the region, and we see tremendously this project very important for the future Pakistan development. So do you agree that it's a real game changer? And does ADB supports this project?
Yeah, look, there are two parts, whether we support it and whether I think it's a game changer. I am not sure whether it is a game changer or not, because we are too early to make such a judgment. What I can say is that it has a potential. It has absolutely the potential to be a game changer. It's a fantastic opportunity. But I also say this is not automatic. You see, sometimes I try to explain people what is the difference between a transit corridor and an economic corridor, because what we want to see is we want to see economic corridor. Not just a transit corridor. If we only build a road, let's say from Gilgit to Gwara,
it's a transit, you know,
and there is only trucks going on there, and you don't see much economic activity on the side of it.
Exactly.
Then you end up paying maintenance fees for the road. And it is not having a big economic impact. And you, at the end of the day, you have to pay back even the investment cost for this. But if it is done in a way that we do have industrial zones, that we have integrated, I mean, you need to have also
export processing zone.
Yeah, but I mean, then you also need to look, for instance, at the skills, and you need to have the people. So it's really an integrated process, and the investment that is done under CPEC is integrated in the broader development context. Then it certainly can have a very, very positive impact. And that's what we are all hoping for. But as I said, it is only because it is there, it doesn't mean that the benefit will be automatic. And I think that is the message that I have. It's a great opportunity, but one has to do a lot of additional things around it and also properly analyze all these measures that have to be taken. And that we'll see only in a few years' time. Right now, I think we're still very early at the process, because very few projects have yet completed. So I mean, it's encouraging, and I think this is a good thing. Now, the second question you ask is ADB investing into this. You see, we have always been investing in connectivity and energy. Now they say, oh, it's all CPEC. We had 10 years ago, we developed a program called the National Transport Corridor. So currently, we are financing the M4 motorway. M4 motorway, which goes from Faisalabad to Multan. And ultimately, connects the M2 that goes from Lahore, Islamabad. You can branch off Faisalabad and drive all the way down to Multan from Islamabad. So that is being currently done. We are also financing the E35, which is the Havelian Expressway. Okay. So that goes from Burham and goes all the way to Havelian and Mansehra. So now if you look at the map and you say, where is the CPEC corridor? That, of course, is part of what the CPEC corridor is there. Okay. But we were doing this already before the CPEC was even done, because it was part of the National Transport Corridor. So there is complementarity of what ADB is doing and what CPEC is doing, because it just makes sense. But it is not because now CPEC is there that ADB is coming in. We had already a strategic investment program, and that was seeing things, and maybe the Chinese were thinking the same thing, and we came to the same conclusion. And so now, of course, it's all put together, because the money that we had was nowhere sufficient to do it all. So I think that CPEC now complements it very nicely.
And so do you think that regional countries can benefit from this project, as our government is ready and invited other countries to become the part of this project?
Absolutely. I think one of the big challenges and also big opportunities for Pakistan is to better connect with the regional neighbors. If you look at the trading pattern currently, most of the trade is with Europe, US, or further parts of Asia. And other than with China, there is not much trade going on with the neighboring countries. Of course, we know that the issue with India is also political. But from the economic perspective, there's huge potential to trade, and I think, I come from a country, Germany, that had many wars, and that had a very difficult relationship with one neighbor called France. There were many fights between those countries, and eventually they started to trade. And I think everybody is better off if you're trading. Now you're looking on the eastern side. Currently, there are countries in Central Asia that are landlocked. Even Afghanistan, they have no access to the sea. The closest port from Tashkent in Uzbekistan is in Karachi. It's not somewhere in Russia or wherever. It's in Karachi, in Bishkek, in Almaty. The closest port from Almaty is in Karachi. So there's huge opportunity. So if these countries, they are landlocked, ultimately, you need to export your goods, in particular, not the whole world can be reached by land. If you want to export to the United States or parts of Asia, you have to go through the sea. So Karachi is actually, or at that time now Gwadar, which is coming up, Pakistan provides this access. So if we can put in place the infrastructure, that is good. But it's not just good enough to put in the road and the border post. We are also, by the way, ADB is upgrading the border post. We are upgrading the post in Chaman and in Torkam and also on the Wagah border. So that is also very important. But you also need to make the trade agreements. You need to have what we call the soft side of the deal being done. Having said this, we strongly believe in trade, and we are actually having one initiative. It's called CAREC, Central Asia Regional Economic.
I was about to ask about it, that Central Asian, this regional economic forum is very, very important. So actually, what is the role of your bank in this regard?
CAREC is an economic cooperation initiative now between 10 countries. Originally, it started with 6 countries, then it was 8, then it's 10. Pakistan joined, and they had a ministerial conference actually here in Islamabad just about 3 weeks ago, where we admitted Georgia as the 11th member. And it was a very successful conference in the sense that one realizes the potential that the region has. And the role of ADB in this is a facilitator. We're just a facilitator because, and that means we are also performing as a secretariat. We are helping to organize the meeting, but at the end of the day, it was really the leadership of the countries, in that case, the leadership of Pakistan for this year's conference. Next year will be in Tajikistan, so we are facilitating, we're bringing in analytical materials, we're financing some of the projects, but the ownership is really with the countries, and of course that is where we see a lot of opportunities, particularly for Pakistan. The Pakistan government has actually shown great commitment to more closely cooperate with the rest of the regions. I have witnessed many ministers going to Tashkent and to Dushanbe and to Ashgabat. Many regional projects are happening. You may have heard of the Tapi gas pipeline, the Kasa energy. So there's many regional projects, and I think it's not just on the trade, it's also on the energy cooperation, that there's a lot of potential. And this CAREC, Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, is a platform to make it all happen.
And sir, how do you see the Pakistan future economy outlook? Do you think that Pakistan's economy will be more stable in coming years?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I do think that the country without doubt has the potential. And as I said, it always depends on many factors. It's not only up to Pakistan, because you also depend on the global economy, what is happening globally. And right now, the environment is a little bit challenging globally. I mean, exports are going down. So traditional export markets, of course, have been Europe and the US for many of the textiles. So there's this very, very tough competition there, you know. I mean, Bangladesh, Cambodia, they can be very competitive on the price. And some of the exporters came to me and said, look, I mean, it's very difficult. Our currency is more expensive. Our power is more expensive. Or if the power is available. So they say it's a little bit difficult to compete. And exports have been going down. And of course, so this is a global thing. Then China, what will happen to China? If China should slow down, and of Pakistan depending also to some extent on China, it will depend on China. So whether Pakistan will do well or not so well also depends on external factors. Having said this, and the other aspects, of course, are how is domestically stability, peace, how is this moving. But we feel like right now we have gone through a relatively stable period. Also economically, historically, we had a high growth, we had a low growth. It's now quite stable, and I think at a very good rate. And what is happening at the moment is that every year growth is better than the previous year. I mean, maybe it doesn't matter how much it is better, but as long as
it's improving. You know.
It's improving. And I think this is the important message, that currently the economy is on the right track. And I do think that the right measures are taken to carry things forward. And I do think there's a lot of opportunities there also. I mean, you just see that companies are looking to reinvest in Pakistan. I mean, we had a Turkish president here. I know Turkish companies, many Turkish companies have been investing. But I also see other countries, companies coming back. I heard that, like for instance, Yamaha is quite successful with motorcycle production. The motorcycle production went up. I heard that actually Renault wants to come in with Nissan on the car production. So I do think these are all very...
Sir, concluding the last question that we are near to wrap up, so time is about to complete. What is your view about the most important ADB work in Pakistan? And any message that last you want to give to the people of Pakistan or government or anything?
Well, I think there are many priorities that we're doing, but it's all about development. And it's, at the end of the day, it's all about improving the lives of people. So for me, this is what also is why we are here and why I feel very proud. Whether it is providing people access to energy, whether it is providing people access to transport, improving urban transport, protecting them from natural disasters. Everything at the end of the day has to improve the livelihood of the people of Pakistan. And I do think that ADB is making a contribution to that. And because of that, I feel very proud to work for ADB and to serve the people of Pakistan in that capacity.
Sir, thank you very much for being with us. And you explain in a very detail your projects in Pakistan initiated by Asian Development Bank, and we can say that a very cordial relationship that we have with your bank. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And viewers, this is the end of program. Thank you very much.